They're not good enough to start. They're not even good enough to play. But they do talk a good game. So come join Lou and Jose from the sidelines where all the best sports discussions happen anyway. Welcome in to the Benchwarmers podcast.
Welcome into the program, everyone. I am Lou Ruggieri. That is Jose Ortiz. And this is the Benchwarmers podcast. Wherever, whenever, and however you happen to be listening, we appreciate you taking some time out of your day to spend it with us. We are going to make it worth your while. And this is a football-heavy show because we are just under 10 days away, I think, from opening kickoff. So that's exciting, and we have a lot to cover, a lot of news, notes, things like that. We have underachievers and overachievers coming up a little while. NFC North, we're breaking down our last division, and we're going to kind of rate and rank those guys. A little bit of news to start the show, and you can follow us along iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcast. We are newly on this, it's called Anchor. It's by Spotify. We just joined up. We're now part of their team as well, so happy to be there. Thank you. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, at The Benchwarmers Podcast, at The BW Pod on Twitter, or simply go to thebenchwarmers.com for all links, news, and notes regarding the show. Benchwarmers with a Z for marketing purposes. This is season 2, episode 18. This is our 68th show overall, and I'm excited for that. I don't know what we're going to do for our 100th show, Jose, but we're going to make it extra special. I don't know. Maybe we'll just not talk sports for every 100 shows or something. But we are going to talk sports this week. A lot to get to today. In full disclosure, we were supposed to record the show yesterday, and I was violently ill for no real discernible reason. I'm fine today, but it kind of worked out because today was the cutdown day for the NFL, and we got some late breaking news today that we would have missed out on had we recorded yesterday. So the biggest one, and we have a bunch to get to, so we don't have to go too far into all these. A lot of them are kind of just whatever, but there are some interesting headlines. The biggest one, I think, I don't know, you seem to be a little lackluster when it came to talking about it, but Cam Newton very unceremoniously released by the Patriots today in favor of Mac Jones being their starter. I was very surprised by this. You didn't seem like you were very caught off guard at all.
Yeah, it's the only thing that was surprising is that it took this long to me. You drafted Mac Jones in the first round. Cam Newton was terrible last season. I don't know what you would either. It's like I'm just trying to think of what would be the purpose of keeping him on the team, especially. I don't know. It just doesn't. I'm not sure where Cam Newton really fits in the NFL right now with his current skill set, unless there's some sort of revival of his athleticism, where he can get back to being a kind of that 4.5, 4.6 speed guy and just running people over. Unless he can get back to that, I don't really know what he has to offer NFL teams anymore. I mean, we saw what he can do as a passer last year.
Well, yes, we're in one of several fantasy football leagues, and somebody had mentioned Cam got cut, and I guess the guy who drafted him was very upset, which I don't know why he drafted him in the first place, but my comment was simply that Cam minus the athleticism is a very subpar quarterback. He's not very good. But reviewing his numbers, his completion percentage it's preseason, was 66.7%, which is way above his career average. It felt like, there's a couple things that came to mind. One is Mac Jones is a rookie, and Bill Belichick doesn't really seem like the type to start a rookie game 1, week 1 of his rookie season. People talk about, you always hear pros talk about the speed of the game and how it takes a while to kind of adjust and catch up and just understand that, the fastest guys in college are now all of the guys in the pros. So Cam, having that experience there, and at least, you could, I don't want to say with sacrificial Cam, I guess,
Very clever.
Yeah, thanks. But it just seems like it would be beneficial to kind of let Mac Jones come into it naturally. I mean, there is, Cam being Cam, he's probably going to get hurt. He's been banged up. He had that Liz Frank injury that took him out for a year. He had the shoulder surgery that's basically how he ended up on the Patriots, is that no one knew if he was going to be able to throw the ball again.
So they were right.
Well, yeah. Well,
very well.
He was never a very good thrower of the ball.
That's fair.
That's the thing. And it was setting up to be sort of it's sort of a Drew Bledsoe, Tom Brady-esque situation where, Drew was a good quarterback. He was, but it's different. Obviously, it's a much different set of circumstances, but it could have played out sort of in that same vein where Mac comes in after Cam gets hurt or gets COVID again or who knows what. But, Mac Jones, I mean, he's Tom Brady-esque. His completion percentage, I talked about Cam's, he was 69.2% in the preseason, which he was, I think he was a 70% completion percentage thrower in college. So to be doing just about that in the pros, preseason or not, is pretty impressive.
To get where the Patriots want to go as an organization, they need Mac Jones to start right away. Like Cam Newton, you're not learning anything from Cam Newton on the side. No offense to Cam Newton, he had a great career. So? Not really. Cam Newton is not a good passer. It's like, what are you learning from him? Like I'm sure there's maybe some things about studying the game, but you and I have had discussions about this in the past. I'm not sure it's been on the air where we kind of debated whether Cam Newton is really like, is he like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning? Like, is he really in the books? Is he really in the playbook studying? Does he know it like that? And we had our doubts about that, where that would really be the only thing that I think he could learn from a Cam Newton type of quarterback at this stage. It was like, if Andy Dalton is the starting quarterback, I'd be less surprised. I'd be more surprised that he get cut because Andy Dalton is a traditional pocket passing quarterback who didn't have ridiculous athleticism to rely on. Yeah. And so I would imagine that he was more of a student of the game than Cam Newton was.
Yeah, you're probably right. And I guess it's just surprising to me because Cam, I think he was owed $3.5 million this year, which is basically nothing when it comes to quarterback. Yeah. And, just the idea, 17-game season, it just seemed like, backup quarterbacks are going to become more and more of a precious commodity. And no offense to Brian Hoyer, but I don't know if Brian Hoyer is really going to be an improvement over Cam Newton as your backup quarterback.
And that's fair. I don't think he's going to be an improvement. I think, if I'm the Seahawks, I don't know who their backup quarterbacks off the top of my head, but if I'm the Seahawks,
Cowboys,
okay, maybe the Cowboys. But I don't even think the Cowboys. If I'm the Seahawks or the Ravens, maybe I consider bringing Cam as a backup. I guess I did hear the Cowboys are rumored. I just don't see Cam being a good backup there.
I don't either, but it's something that Jerry Jones would do at this point.
What they should have done is, actually, I know we're going to get to that later, but what they should have done is what everyone should have done is traded the 6th-round pick to get Gardner Minshew as the backup. I'd much rather have him as a backup than Cam Newton.
Yep, which leads to our next point. Gardner Minshew has been traded to the Eagles for the aforementioned 6th-round pick. This, I thought, was a shoo-in. Yeah. No pun intended, for the Cowboys, Dak being kind of questionable with that shoulder surgery. And while this didn't make our news highlight, it does make me happy to see that Ben DiNucci was cut by the Cowboys and released. I don't know if you watched, how much of Hard Knocks you watched, but I was yelling at him on the TV because he just talked like he's with the bravado that maybe like Aaron Rodgers could do if he really wanted to, like that kind of flexing where he's trying to get people more. He's like, oh, today going to be dangerous today. Feels like things are coming out right today. And like, it just talking down to like Micah Parsons, who's a 1st-round draft pick and playing chat. Like, it just, nothing made me happier than seeing Ben DiNucci finally just be put out of his misery and the rest of us from watching that on Hard Knocks. But I thought Gardner Minshew would have been a good signing for the Cowboys. I am still holding out hope that Nick Foles ends up there because, like we saw last year, without a quality backup quarterback who, truthfully, I thought Andy Dalton might have been, that team is lost.
And I think Andy Dalton would have been a quality backup had his backup stint lasted like 4 games, right? Like you don't want your backup starting 11 games like that's what happened with Andy Dalton last year. Honestly, not only did the Cowboys, I just don't understand. Like, I would have given him a 5th-round pick for Gardner Minshew. Like, it's not just the Cowboys. Almost every team in the NFL dropped the ball here with not going out and getting Gardner Minshew, which for what amounts to a guy who probably won't even make your roster with a 6th-round pick.
In a heartbeat should have done that.
the Packers. I guess Jordan Love's there, so maybe not the Packers. But like, there's a number. We could easily list 15 teams right now that the Dolphins could have taken him. Like anyone should have taken him on their team, and I'm surprised. That,
and it is surprising too that with a team with the Eagles, and I know that they announced that Jalen Hurts is their starter, but I mean Gardner Minshew still thinks that he's a starter. I mean he was playing against Trevor Lawrence, trying to get that starting job. So I don't see him going to the Eagles and just kind of taking a backseat to Jalen Hurts willingly. I feel like he's going to go in there and try to fight, which I mean, Gardner Minshew's young too, but Jalen Hurts is his second season. So he's, I don't know if he's got his feet under him just yet, confidence-wise, but it was very interesting. Like, it wouldn't surprise me to see Gardner Minshew starting if Jalen Hurts has like a bad, 2-game, 3-game stretch, especially in a city like Philadelphia.
I would not be, especially in a city like Philadelphia, and especially on a team that's not really in contention for anything based on what we can, what we see on paper. They're not Super Bowl contenders. They're not division contenders. They're not playoff contenders. So if you're 0-4 or 1-5 or something like that, why not give Gardner Minshew a shot, especially if Jalen Hurts is not playing well? It's a slam dunk, great move by the Eagles. Kind of puzzling a little bit by the Jaguars, though, because once again, like you can't use Gardner Minshew as a backup quarterback on your team. Really a 6th round pick next year is more valuable than having a guy who has been a quality quarterback, maybe not an elite quarterback, but certainly a serviceable quarterback in the NFL, which is more than we can say about half of the backups in the NFL. And
I mean, just to kind of pile on top of that point, I mean, you're risking Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is supposed to be this great player, but their offensive line, the Jaguars, is not very good. So you're talking about potentially setting him up to fail, a la David Carr or even Andrew Luck for that matter. Andrew Luck was a slam dunk number 1 pick who retired early because he just got tired of getting beat up. So why not? If you have a guy who's willing to go out there and kind of take the hits till you can polish up your offensive line, why? I don't know. I don't get it either. It makes no sense to me.
Well, I'm not saying that he should. I think Trevor Lawrence probably should start. You spent that high draft capital on him. It's kind of tough to just sit him for a year, especially in your first year as a coach.
Maybe not a full year, but
yeah, and maybe that's it. I think in the NFL, with your shelf life being so short as a coach, a lot of times you just want to step on the gas and get your picks out there.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. In other news, J.K. Dobbins, the starting running back for the Ravens, this is very sad to see. He was out, knee injury. He's out for the year. ACL, I believe, is the injury. Yeah. So that means Gus Edwards, Justice Hill are in line. I know the Ravens were toying with some other guys. I think Devontae Freeman they brought in to talk to when they didn't end up going with him. But I mean, it's just sad. Nobody wants to see. I don't want to see this. I was hoping, the Ravens are a good running team, and it's just unfortunate.
Yeah, it's another year 2 running back. We saw Cam Akers go down earlier in the offseason, another year 2 running back. And this, from what I've read, this could be more than just a season. That this could be a career-altering type of injury. They're hoping it's not that way, and I'm hoping that way too. Gus Edwards, I think the Ravens will be fine because Gus Edwards he's been a quality replacement in his 3 NFL seasons. He has a career 5.2 yards per carry, which I was surprised to see. Honestly, It's like, oh wow, his yards per carry is that high. So he's been decent, but J.K. Dobbins had potential to be special, and that does take a little bit of the high end ceiling, I think, off of the Ravens offense.
Yeah, and other injury news: David Bakhtiari, the Packers offensive lineman. I think he had knee injury too, right? ACL.
Yeah, ACL.
He's out first 6 weeks and possibly more because that's rough to come back from, especially he's been around for a while.
He had the ACL tear last December, and so just the timeline is usually about a year. So it's going to be tough.
T.Y. Hilton injured his neck. He's out significant amount of time is the quote from the NFL. Unfortunate again, the Colts. T.Y. Hilton, I don't know. I feel like he's been kind of an underachiever. Not all of his own doing, but it's just sad to see because now it feels like the Colts are finally starting to kind of round out into form, and this happens.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna say I'm not overly surprised. I feel like T.Y. Hilton's been coming up a little bit injury prone over the last couple seasons. He hasn't played a full. I mean, he did play 15 games last year. I don't know. I I don't think this is that big of a deal. I looked at him as probably their second or third best wide receiver on the team to begin with.
Yeah.
I think Michael Pittman is probably the number one, and I kind of think Paris Campbell is a better receiver at this point as well.
Yeah.
So, Ty, please get healthy. But yeah, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
You talked about Cam Akers for the Rams going down earlier, so the Rams traded for Sony Michel, and I just want to pat myself on the back and say that Damian Harris looked really well, and I mentioned that last week.
Yep.
And apparently the Patriots agreed with me because they got rid of Sony Michel, who was sort of their de facto starting running back. I mean, Sony Michel to the Rams, I don't know. I mean, whatever. I guess.
He's a nice backup.
He'll be fine. Starters were named. I talked about Jalen Hurts. Teddy Bridgewater named starter for the Broncos. Jameis Winston named starter for the Saints. Are either of those surprising in the least?
Well, I wouldn't say they're surprising. I mean, we felt like the Drew Lock era was over. If Teddy Bridgewater couldn't beat out Drew Lock, I mean, that's it. Your career is done, right? If you can't beat out Drew Lock for a starting spot, Jameis Winston, I mean, he gives the Saints the highest ceiling, right? Taysom Hill's nice, but Jameis Winston it's for where the Saints want to go. You need Jameis Winston, and hopefully he plays his best. He's another guy who's probably on his last chance to prove he belongs in the NFL as a starter.
Yeah, Teddy Bridgewater, I think, can do well on the Broncos. The Broncos, if you look at their roster, have a sneaky good setup. I mean, it just feels like Drew Lock is kind of just giving away a lot of their games. But, you know, Melvin Gordon's there. Javonte Williams is supposed to be really good. That Jerry Jeudy, who I was a big fan of when he was at Alabama. Cortland Sutton was hurt last year a little bit. Noah Fant is a good-looking tight end. I mean, they have a good squad there that just it feels like they're missing sort of that, you know, that Tim Tebow to Peyton Manning, where, you know, Tim Tebow couldn't get anything out of Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders and the other Thomas, Julius Thomas, or what was it, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, right. Yep.
And then Peyton Manning comes in and breaks every passing record known to man with that same setup. So it's not, obviously, I don't think that the Broncos are that good, but they could be a lot better. And I don't know if Teddy Bridgewater's the guy, but maybe just by virtue, and sort of the same thing with Jameis Winston, by virtue of just not giving away the game, they can make themselves a lot better.
Well, I think you could say that for Teddy Bridgewater. Jameis Winston is famous for giving away games, as we know, the 30 interceptions 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I do think Jameis Winston, and I think you brought this up a few weeks ago. Listen, this guy threw for over 5,000 yards in a season. Like, there is clearly some talent there. He just has to, you know, the arm talent's there. Perhaps the decision making is not. Maybe with a little help from Sean Payton, he can improve.
Yeah, and that's what I meant. Jameis Winston's sort of battling against himself at this point. But I think, you know, and a lot of those interceptions were not all his fault. I mean,
of course,
you know, Bruce Arians is known to want to throw the ball down the field, and, you know, Jameis Winston as a first-round pick, starting basically as a rookie, was not. He's not in any position to kind of argue with the guy. But I think with Sean Payton, they can, and I mean, quite honestly, the lack of offensive weapons there, it's going to be hard to throw the ball down the field, even if he wanted to. So I think, was it Marquez Callaway is their number one receiver right now? Michael Thomas out for 6 weeks.
6 weeks, Who
knows if he even plays again. So, and lastly, I don't know if this matters or not, but Malcolm Butler, I was thinking about this. Malcolm Butler's been placed on the reserved retired list. Apparently he's going through some sort of personal issue and he's contemplating retiring. I didn't know until very recently that the Cardinals had traded for him. And it made me wonder, I was trying to think of a player who had a more precipitous fall from grace than Malcolm. Malcolm Butler was the greatest human being in the world when he beat the Seattle Seahawks in that game, when he intercepted that pass on the goal line. He was the king of the universe. And then the next, was it the next year that he was benched and was not in there when they lost to the Eagles? And since then he got traded to the Titans, and he was kind of just lost in anonymity there. And then just maybe David Tyree, ironically, might be in that same, where he's just the quintessential superstar of everything that is for all of 6 months, and then just gone.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Hostetler kind of comes to mind a little bit, but no, that sounds. I'd have to really think about it, but yeah, he definitely went from being like one of the better corners in the game to barely holding on to a roster spot in the NFL over the last few years. It's probably much ado about nothing. The Cardinals don't really have much on defense, so I do think in some ways they were relying on him, and maybe that's a problem. Yeah. Speaking of defense, one guy you forgot to mention, Stephon Gilmore on the PUP till week 7, still recovering from a quad injury he suffered in week 15 last year.
Oh, yeah, I missed that one. Sorry.
Yep, no worries. I'm just throwing it out there. There's so many things.
All right, and that's news and notes for this week. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back in a little while. We have our 2 each. We have an overachiever and an underachiever that we decided on, and we'll talk about that. But coming up next, more NFL. It's time to break down the NFC North, so stick around. We'll be right back on the Benchwarmers podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Benchwarmers podcast. Follow along with us on the Benchwarmers podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to review us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.
If you're sick with COVID-19 or think you might have it, take steps to help protect other people from getting sick. Stay home except to get medical care. Call the doctor before visiting. Separate yourself from others who live with you. Wear a cloth face covering to protect others. Cover your coughs and sneezes with a tissue and clean your hands right away. Avoid sharing items with other people in your home. This includes things like towels and bedding. Be sure dishes are washed in hot water or the dishwasher before anyone else uses them. Stay aware of how you feel. If you start to have difficulty breathing or if you're worried about your health, call your doctor. For more tips, visit cdc.gov.
And now back to the Benchwarmers podcast with Lou and Jose.
Welcome back to the program, everyone. I am Lou Ruggieri. That is Jose Ortiz, and this is the Benchwarmers podcast. The show is flying along thus far. We covered a lot of headlines in the first segment. Cam Newton released, J.K. Dobbins out for the season, T.Y. Hilton hurt, Gardner Minshew is on the Eagles, Jameis Winston, Teddy Bridgewater named starters, and a few other lesser important things. But you can go back and listen if you'd like. iHeartRadio podcasting, Amazon podcasts, the newly formed Anchor by Spotify. We're a part of that now too, which is fun. Or anywhere you get your podcast for that matter. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, at the Benchwarmers Podcast, at the BW Pod on Twitter, or go to thebenchwarmers.com for all things Benchwarmers. A little bit, we are going to do 2 overachievers and 2 underachievers each, one from the AFC, one from the NFC. So that's something to look forward to. But now, it's time. This is our last division. We have to break down the NFC North. And Jose, I mean, we were just talking off the air a little bit, but it just kind of feels like, I mean, I'm pretty sure we can both pencil in the Packers to be our number one. I mean, injuries aside, I think it's pretty clear they were 13-3 last year, which was 5 games ahead of the Bears at 8-8, and the Vikings 7-9, the Lions 5-11 last year. So I think this one seemed pretty easy to start with. I think the Packers being number one.
Yeah, I mean, despite all the drama that was the Packers this offseason, they're still legitimate Super Bowl contenders. They're absolutely the team to beat in the NFC North, and I mean, they probably on paper, I mean, they certainly top 5 in the NFC. I think you probably could make an argument for them as second or third place. I mean, I don't really have to go through the numbers. We know what Aaron Rodgers can do. He's a Hall of Famer. He had an MVP coming off an MVP year last season. Devontae Adams, maybe the best receiver in the game. Aaron Jones, one of the best running backs in the game. They have good defenders in Kenny Clark and Jair Alexander. If they don't win this division, it would be one of the biggest upsets in recent memory about a team that was supposed to it'd be like the Jets winning. It'd be like the Jets winning the AFC East. That would probably be the equivalent of, or maybe not. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. It would be like the Bills not winning the AFC East. That would be the equivalent of the Packers losing. I don't see any way they don't win this division.
Yeah, I mean, barring an injury, I mean, we talked about David Bakhtiari being hurt. That's going to hurt. That's definitely going to hurt them a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. And, I mean, it seems like it's setting up where he's not going to be there next year. So this might be his, last year was his revenge tour for taking Jordan Love. And then this year could very well be his audition for whatever team he wants to go to next. And yeah, they bring back Aaron Jones, who's excellent running back. A.J. Dillon is their backup, who was also very competent. Devontae Adams, like you said, the best receiver in football last year. They did sign Randall Cobb, which I know is not that big of a deal. Not that big of a deal, but Aaron Rodgers and Randall Cobb. I mean, Aaron Rodgers made Randall Cobb a household name for a little while. And I think the chemistry there, some familiarity, just something to kind of help Aaron just stick it to the Packers even more might be good. And
yeah, I'm curious about how fast Randall Cobb is right now in his career. I think he's still a speedster. Like, I don't know. He's certainly not Tyreek Hill, but they could use that because Devontae Adams, he's more, I mean, he's amazing. He does everything, but to me, he's more of just like the ultimate possession receiver and 50-50 ball guy and red zone target. They don't really have that guy who blows the top off the defense right now. And if Randall Cobb can do that for them, I mean, it's going to make a really good offense even more dangerous.
Yeah, I think Robert Tonyan, by the way, he's 11 touchdowns he received last year, so they're setting up to be pretty good. But
they also brought in Amari Rodgers too, so I mean they should be good. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, we're not breaking any new ground there, saying the Packers are going to win the NFC North. Again, barring injuries.
Severe injuries.
Now it starts getting interesting though. Who are you predicting to be the second best team in the NFC North?
I probably went back and forth on this about 4 times. I settled on the Minnesota Vikings.
As did I.
Yeah, I just last year was shaping up to be a promising season for the Vikings until some early injuries kind of decimated their defense, and their defense was just awful last year. Gave up nearly 30 points per game. They gave up 30 or more points 7 times last season. They don't have the type of offense that's going to routinely, put up, you gave up 35, it's okay, we're going to put up 42. That's not the Vikings. The return of Danielle Hunter and Michael Pierce on defense is going to be amazing for them. And then we already know that, Dalvin Cook, maybe the first or second, we actually have him ranked as the best running back in the game, and according to Benchwarmerz rankings. Kirk Cousins, people like to hate on him, but he's a solid NFL quarterback. And Justin Jefferson was a huge hit of the rookie last year. As long as their defense is average to above average, they should be better than they were. I will say the one thing that worries me about the Vikings, I looked at their schedule. They have the Packers twice. Then they have the Rams. I mean, this is not in order, but this is throughout the season. They have the Rams, the Seahawks, the Browns, the Cardinals, Steelers, Ravens, 49ers, and Chargers. Like, that's not an easy stretch of games where you could easily see them being under 500 in those what is that? That's, sorry to do the math here. It's 10 games. Yeah. 10 games against really tough opponents where I could easily see them being 4-6 or 3-7 during that stretch.
Yeah, I had them second as well. And the one thing that does worry me, although less so now, Kirk Cousins with all his anti-vax stuff, and if he said, if I die, I die, or something to that effect, where it was kind of like, all right, man, that seems a little aggressive considering you have 13 kids and whatever. Yeah. But it's just that could be troubling. But then I did watch a little bit of Kellen Mond in the preseason, and he looks like he's the real deal. I don't know, virus or not, Kirk Cousins' days might be numbered in Minnesota as it is anyway. Dalvin Cook, like you said, is Dalvin Cook. I mean, he's the top 1 or 2 running backs in football. Alexander Mattison, actually not bad backup either. And the emergence of Justin Jefferson last year, Adam Thielen, arguably best hands in the game. It's shaping up to be really well. And you're right, their defense was kind of beat up by injuries. Hunter being the biggest one. When he's on the field, that team is a different team, and he plays he's unbelievable. They did sign Patrick Peterson, which I was surprised. I didn't realize that he was out there. But, I mean, Patrick Peterson a little older now, but still a big body and can still body guys off the line. So, and
that has to upgrade your defense that was terrible last year anyway. So
right.
It's got to be an upgrade.
Right, exactly. And, so it should be interesting. Xavier Woods, free safety, still, he's pretty good last year. Mm-hmm. They did Everson Griffin, they cut, but they might re-sign him. It might be just a contract thing. It looks like he's an edge rusher for them he's been in the league for a while. He's been there a little over a decade, so he's he's looking like he might end up being pretty good. But yeah, so that's second. I think that seems to be the safe bet, which I'm assuming means that we both have the Chicago Bears in third, which, I did struggle with this a little bit because, Andy Dalton, I think after he gets mauled by the Rams defense in week 1 is probably not going to be there very long. Justin Fields looks like he's setting up to be the starter very soon. Nick Foles seems like he's auditioning to go be a backup somewhere else. Just Matt Nagy, it felt like at first he was a genius, and then with Mitch Trubisky, he became kind of not a genius, and they were a running team, then they were kind of a trick play team, and they have a good offense. I mean, David Montgomery is a good running back. Allen Robinson might be the most underrated wide receiver in the league.
Absolutely.
Marquise Goodwin, solid. We talked about this before. Cole Kmet, I think, is a very, very underrated tight end. So, I mean, if they could just kind of keep those guys upright for the most part, meaning that offensive line is a little suspect, which is problematic. I think that they can do really well.
Yeah, and they still have the strong defense. Khalil Mack is still there, Eddie Jackson, Roquan Smith, Danny Trevathan. They have the pieces in place on defense to really, I mean, they can be an elite defense. That's how good they are.
Keem Hicks.
Yeah, Keem Hicks. Like they agree. I do agree that Andy Dalton's not going to be the starter there for long, and that's part of what had me put them in third. Like, from my experience watching the NFL for, I don't even know, like 30 years now, stability at the quarterback position is so important. Even if you have a mediocre quarterback, like just having the same quarterback and having a stable quarterback who's consistent is helpful, or more helpful than the opposite. And so starting with Andy Dalton, they'll probably yank him after 2 or 3 games, and then you come in with Justin Fields. What do we expect from him? What's his learning curve going to be? I'm not sure that they're going to be able to get the ship right in time to make a playoff run, and that's why I kind of have them third. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up being second place at the end of the season, but I just, based on just stability and the odds, I kind of had to pick the Bears. And speaking of Matt Nagy, is there a coach in the NFL with a hotter seat than Matt Nagy? I don't even, like, it's just randomly, I'm starting to just throw that on you. Just kind of hit me just now. It's like, he's got the hottest seat in the NFL probably, other than maybe Pete Carroll, but he's got a Super Bowl. So I don't know.
Yeah, now Pete Carroll I think is fine. Maybe Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona.
And Mike McCarthy.
I was just going to say
Dallas.
Mike McCarthy. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mike McCarthy. If they have another 6-10 season, pain, hurt, injuries or not, I don't think he's going to be there very long at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a good defense can make your offense better because they put you in better positions. And I think that this defense, like you said, I mean, Khalil Mack still is one of, he's just frightening. It's just crazy how good he is. He's the first player. I used to read a Muscle & Fitness magazine. I still do, but I've been reading it for years. And I think it was maybe 2 years ago, every September they would do an all strength and speed team in the NFL because obviously Muscle & Fitness has a lot to do, NFL has a lot to do with Muscle & Fitness and vice versa. Khalil Mack is the only player I've ever seen who made the all strength team and the all speed team in the same year. He's sick. Just, if you had to get and this is a fun, I brought this up, I don't remember, one of my friends the other day for no reason at all. Would you rather get in a fight with Khalil Mack, 6'3", 260, or Aaron Donald, who is 6'1", 284?
I think I'd rather get in a fight with Khalil Mack because
you're going to die either way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like Aaron Donald reminds me more of like if Mike Tyson were to hit you. That's kind of how I feel. Not that he's as short as Mike Tyson or that I'm taller than Aaron Donald.
Yeah, Khalil Mack could be more of an Evander Holyfield.
Yeah. Like I could see that the short area power that Aaron Donald would have would just, he'd punch me in my stomach and like my tongue would fly out. It was just awful.
But yeah, it just made me fun. Laugh. I was thinking about that. I don't know how that came up. Things.
Is there any football player you would be okay with fighting? Like you actually feel like you'd have a chance against? It has to be some backup quarterback or a punter.
Some of those punters are pretty big though. I think Colt McCoy. I don't know why. I think he'd go down pretty easy. Nick Foles is definitely, he's super Christian. He's probably a pacifist. He could probably just, he'd forgive you immediately. I don't know. There's some, I'm sure there's a couple.
They're all way bigger than me, way stronger than me, so I'd lose to them all.
Yeah.
So.
You'd probably still lose, but just your chances are a little bit better. So that leaves the Detroit Lions once again in last place, and they were 5-11 last year. I mean,
how did they win 5 games? How did they win 5 games last year? I don't even know how they won 5 games. Okay, I'm sorry to cut you off.
I could go through it if you want.
No.
I don't know how interesting going through the Detroit Lions 5-11 season would be, but I mean, I'll start there. Over under 5 wins for the Lions this season.
Under. Not it's. I. If you said over under 3, that would be where I would really
3.5. 3.5.
Yeah. See, it's like even the 3, like the 3.5 definitely is under. I'm not. I can't go to 4. Like I literally have them. Like I said, I don't see. I literally have in my notes here. I really don't see any way they win more than 3 to 4 games this season. So that 3.5 is right smack dab and where I'm.
I think
I'd lean under. I think I would lean under.
I think they get 4. And I mean,
they have no talent on this team.
Yeah, TJ Hawkinson is going to be probably their best receiver, and he's a tight end. In the same day, and I don't know why this made me laugh, just the crazy names in the NFL. In the same day, the Lions cut a guy named Geronimo, and they signed a guy named Trinity. So Geronimo Allison cut, former Green Bay Packer, and they signed a guy named Trinity Benson, who I don't think anybody knows about. DeAndre Swift is there, but he was kind of hurt last year. Jamal Williams is supposed to be something special, but I mean, who knows? They lost Kenny Golladay. They lost Roy
Stafford.
Jones, and they signed Jared Goff, who
you can't downgrade at quarterback, downgrade at wide receiver, and be better than you were last season.
Yeah,
like DeAndre Swift, like you can be talented. He could be a good player, but your offense is terrible. What are you really like? Unless he's Barry Sanders.
Yeah,
I don't see how we can.
They didn't even really win with Barry Sanders either.
No, it's fair, but they did win more than 3 games most of the time.
Yes, they did make the playoffs once.
Yeah, no, but it's a good point though. I mean, it's part of the reason why Barry Sanders retired. Like, why am I going to keep getting beat up to not make the playoffs? But
I mean, the best player on this entire team might be Jeff Okudah, their cornerback.
Yeah, or T.J. Hawkinson.
Yeah,
probably one of those two. Yeah,
they did sign Tyrell Williams, former Raider. I mean,
yeah, because
okay.
They cut Brashad Perriman, and I mean, like, just I didn't even know. Like, I guess Tyrell Williams is their number 1 wide receiver right now, which is I mean, that's really bad. That's really bad to have Tyrell as your number 1 wide receiver. So, they're basically in the driver's seat or maybe in the passenger seat, depending on how you feel about Houston, for the number 1 overall pick next season.
Yeah, so we're in agreement. So it's Packers, Vikings, Bears, Lions. So let's do it. So compared to 2020, Packers over under 13 wins. And keeping in mind, this is a 17
over under 13 wins. Oh, yeah. You're going there.
I'm just going from last season. I'm just going to do last season's numbers. So
because Vegas has them at 10. No, I'm going under on 13.
Maybe we can do Vegas if you have to.
No, but like it's actually kind of crazy. I like your way better. I like why do Vegas? I like your way better. Let's do it that way. Yeah, I'm under 13 wins, definitely.
I think 13 with a 17th game might be about right. But if I had to gun to my head, I'd say under. Probably. I'd say 12 is probably about where they end up. The Vikings were 7-9 last year, over under.
I'm going to go over on that.
Me too. Bears, and this is impossible to do again, they were 8-8. So it's literally they can't do that again. So it has to be over or under 8-8.
That's really tough. I think I would lean over, just barely, but I think I'd lean over. That's a really tough one. That's probably that's because I
might go under by a game. I might go 8-9.
I could literally, if you said like that the Bears ended up winning 6 games this season, I wouldn't be surprised. If you said they win 11 games, I probably wouldn't be that surprised either. Like that's the range of the outcomes. I could see them going anywhere from 6 to 11 games.
Yeah. I mean, I like Justin Fields a lot. I think he's going to be really good as long as he doesn't get, the David Carr treatment where he just gets beat to death and has 76 sacks in his rookie year.
Well, luckily, he's a little bit more mobile than David Carr, so hopefully he can avoid some of those sacks.
And the Lions 5-11. I think we
way under.
Yeah, it's a shame. All right. So, all right, that's our NFC North. Packers, Vikings, Bears, Lions. We're in agreement, and that's probably how it's going to shake out. So,
complete. Yep.
Coming up next, I doubt that these are going to be the same teams, and we're going to be on agreement with that, but I'm itching to find out. We have 2 overachievers and 2 underachievers going into the 2021 season, so we're going to get to mine and Jose's right after this on the Benchwarmerz podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Benchwarmers Podcast. Follow along with us on the Benchwarmers Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to review us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.
If you think or know you had COVID-19, you can be around others after 10 days since symptoms first appeared, and after 24 hours with no fever without fever-reducing medication, and after other symptoms have improved. If you have tested positive for COVID-19 and you had no symptoms, you can be around others 10 days after you got tested for COVID-19. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/coronavirus.
Welcome back to the Benchwarmers Podcast, where being all talk is actually a good thing. Now, back to the action. Or talk, I guess.
Welcome back to the program, everyone. I am still Lou Ruggieri. That is still Jose Ortiz. And this is still the Benchwarmers Podcast. Show has flown by so far. Season 2, episode 18, almost in the books. You can go back and listen to all of our first season and all of our second season shows up till now. iHeartRadio, Amazon, Anchor is the new one from Spotify, iTunes, pretty much wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us there. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, at the Benchwarmers Podcast, at the BW Pod on Twitter, or go to thebenchwarmers.com. Talked a lot of breaking news. Cam Newton released, J.K. Dobbins hurt for the season, Bridgewater and Winston named starters. We broke down the NFC North. Jose and I both agree it's going to be Packers, Vikings, Bears, Lions in that order, barring any sort of significant injury at this point. And finally, it's time to do kind of a fun thing, especially going into the season, now that we're done with our divisional breakdowns. 2 overachievers and 2 underachievers, teams that we think going into the season. So, do you want to start glass half full or glass half empty, Jose? Let's
go with the overachievers.
Okay.
So I'll start with my overachiever from the AFC. I'm not sure if you did it this way, but I picked one from the AFC, one from the NFC. I tried to not pick an obvious one, at least what I would consider obvious. So my overachiever is the New York Jets. It's not saying much to overachieve on a franchise that hasn't had a winning record since 2015 and is 23-57 since 2015.
And they were 2-14 last year. So
2-14, yeah. But it's not just that. Like, I like what I've seen this offseason and the preseason. I like what I've seen from Zach Wilson. Corey Davis has looked good. Yeah. I'm not saying that I think they're going to win 12 games and challenge for the postseason, but I expect this, I think that this Jets team has a great chance to kind of get close to 500. I wouldn't pick them to do that, but just I think the pieces are in place for them to start advancing and moving forward as a franchise, kind of the way that we saw the Browns do it as soon as Baker Mayfield got there, and just started kind of getting better year after year. I could see this being year one of a big improvement for the New York Jets.
I mean, so they were 2-14 last year. I mean, what would qualify as an overachievement, do you think, for them? I mean,
I think
wins?
7 wins. 7 wins.
Okay.
7 wins to me. That's 6 wins is whatever. I think 7 wins. You're 7-10.
Yeah.
You're 7-10.
So I guess about 5 wins would be the expectation then. Is what I mean. That feels about right.
I forget where we had them at, but we had them in that 4 to 5 range. And I if they won I wouldn't be surprised if they won 7 games and were competitive throughout other games that maybe just kind of fell short at the end, as you see with a lot of teams that are getting better.
And I do think that with the addition of your former defensive coach Robert Saleh as their new head coach, I mean, he does have the right attitude. I mean, just watching him, he's got poise. He has the respect of the players. I mean, he's got a pretty good resume. So, I mean, Zach Wilson does look good. I just hope that he is able to stay healthy. And I kind of hope that the Jets sign a quality backup. They would have been another one for Gardner Minshew to go to, like we were talking about earlier in the show. It worries me that, Zach Wilson is going to be their starter and should be their starter, but they should have someone there to kind of help him out a little bit more, but not so much. My overachiever in the AFC actually is from that same division, but it is the New England Patriots. I think they were 7-9 last year, and they're getting a bunch of defensive starters back. Dante Hightower is there, Devin McCourty's back. Stephon Gilmore is out, like we talked about earlier, but Lawrence Guy, Matthew Judon they signed from the Ravens, Kyle Van Noy they re-signed from the Dolphins. Their defense is going to be better than expected, and their offense, I think now with Mac Jones being the clear-cut starter, not saying that he's Tom Brady, he's not going to be Tom Brady, but he has that Tom Brady-esque kind of ability where he's an accurate passer. He's a pocket passer, and he's an accurate guy, and I think that's what Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels have been comfortable with for the better part of 2 decades. That combined with the fact that they actually went out and signed free agents for the first time in God knows how long. I mean, Nelson Aguilar, while he kind of floundered on the Eagles, he sort of had a reemergence when he was on the Raiders. So in a scheme where he's there, he could be very effective. I think Hunter Henry there, they do. Damian Harris, I talked about, he's like my sleeper pick for the year, and James White. You can't discount James White being there either. Jonnu Smith, the other tight end. So they have a lot of options, and I think that they're going to be significantly better than the 7-9 record they posted last year.
That's a great call. I really like that pick. I looked at the Patriots, and I just kind of wanted to talk about the Jets a little bit. But yeah, the Patriots, I mean, the fact that they were, we talk about how the Lions win 5 games last year. Like, the Patriots winning 7 games last year was just a testament to the defense and to the coaching staff to maximizing that team. That team had no business winning 7 games last year. And for them to be basically bringing the same team back and then adding all the players that they lost to either to injury or to COVID-19 opt-outs, I'm expecting a nice step up. What are you looking at the Patriots as far as a win total this year? What would be overachieving for that?
Well, they were 7-9 last year. I think anything over 12. I think they could hit that. I think they could hit that 12 win mark. I do.
Wow, that would be impressive. I mean, the Jets, it's guaranteed 2 wins right there. Yeah.
The Dolphins, at worst, you would think that they would split with. 1. So,
yeah.
I'd have to go through their whole schedule, but I think 12 and up would be considered an overachievement. I think I would pencil them in for like 10, 11 wins. I think would be sort of the expectation.
And I think that's where we both kind of had them there at that 10, 11 spot when we were doing the AFC East breakdown. All right, great. So my NFC overachieving team, we talked about them earlier. It was the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay.
Kirk Cousins is a quarterback that everyone likes to hate on, and it's fine. I think his biggest crime is not being spectacular, right? He's and
driving a minivan.
Yeah, I mean, that's part that kind of fits into it though, right? Like that's so. I didn't even know that. That is so Kirk Cousins. Yeah. He's just very no frills. There's not like a lot of excitement, but at the end of the day, since 2015, here are his numbers: 172 touchdowns, 65 interceptions, 68% completion percentage. This guy just goes out and gets it done every year, not in an elite level, but at a good level. And he's a very good quarterback. They have the pieces on offense. We've already talked about their defense. They're getting their defensive players back. If their defense can play just above average, I think they can challenge for the playoffs, and I think they can win in that 10 to 11, 12 games possibly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a question of the defense because their offense is really good. And like you said, I mean, Kirk Cousins, he had a good year last year. I mean, I know I make fun of him too, but he did play very well. And their offense really has no holes in it. I mean, they have one of the best running backs in the league. Their wide receiving core is up there. Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson. They have all the makings of a great team. It's just that defense kind of let them down last year. And presuming that they don't have the same amount of injuries they had last year, they should do significantly better. So I
Absolutely.
agree. I didn't agree with my NFC overachiever. The Vikings is a good call, but I picked the Carolina Panthers. Actually,
very good.
Because the Panthers, this team they were not good last year, and that was a big part of it was due to the fact that Christian McCaffrey was hurt basically the entire year. They went 5-11. And honestly, I'm kind of a Sam Darnold believer. I think that he was stuck in the purgatorial Jets organization with the, he who shall not be named Adam Gase, Voldemort coach. And the other thing, too, behind him, I don't know if you remember this guy, P.J. Walker, who was the MVP of the XFL the one year that it was. He is exciting to watch. And I know if they end up getting to him that's probably not a good sign for the Panthers, but we talk about quality backups. I mean, if Sam Darnold does get hurt, they have an exciting, talented player to come in and at least fill that void for a little while. Assuming Christian McCaffrey's back, he's probably top 3 running backs in the league. He's a perfect check down safety blanket for a guy like Sam Darnold. Robbie Anderson obviously had a reemergence last year, again, after he got out of the purgatorial Jets organization. DJ Moore is turning into a superstar. And their defense, I mean, they spent almost an entire draft on defense. I mean, they're set up to do really well. And I think that they're going to significantly improve on that 5 wins they had last year.
And I think just to even build on your point, the path in front of them, outside of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are going to be great, you look at the Saints and the Falcons in the same division. I wouldn't be overly surprised if the Panthers end up in second place and the Vikings and the Falcons are, whatever, third, fourth, duking it out there. The Panthers really are in position to make a big jump if they can stay healthy. And then you're going into, like you said, year 2 under Matt Rule. I mean, there's no reason to expect them to not improve. Nice pick.
Yeah, I think that they're going to be, I think their defense is going to be very, it's going to take advantage a lot of the Falcons offense and probably, Jameis Winston. I mean, he was a turnover machine. I mean, I don't want to see it, but you have a very anxious defense to get out there. So I think that they can keep them in the games, even if Sam Darnold isn't doing that well. Which leads us to our underachievers. I don't know if you'd like to go first. We may or may not have the same. We didn't talk about these beforehand, but
it always makes it more fun when we don't.
Yeah.
I'll stick in the NFC. My underachiever in the NFC is the Arizona Cardinals.
Oh, okay.
This is part of it because one, they're in a really tough division, right? So it's, when you have 3 really strong opponents in your division, it's hard to overachieve. But then this is just a team that, when you look at them, I don't really feel like they improved anywhere. Last year, their only playmakers were Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
This year, their only playmakers are Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. We don't. They're bringing in Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds is going to be the presumptive starter at the running back position there. We haven't really seen anything from him. Who knows? Maybe he can be great. Maybe not. James Conner's their backup. We already know he's not great.
Yeah.
They brought in J.J. Watt and A.J. Green to try and boost the team up, but J.J. Watt and A.J. Green over the last few years have not seemed to be their vintage selves. They seem to be, in the decline. Now maybe that can change with the change of scenery, but there's just nothing that has happened this offseason, that makes me think that the Cardinals are going to significantly improve on their 500 finish, which they limped to last year. They limped to a 500 finish last year. I don't see any reason why they would be better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they have a chance to be if AJ Green can stay reasonably healthy. I mean, I think he's still got some talent, and I think not being the number 1 receiver and having a clear upper echelon top flight receiver on the other side like DeAndre Hopkins can really maybe make him even better because he'll be facing much weaker competition than he's used to. I mean, Chase Edmonds is good. I think that's it. I think the biggest question mark is going to be, can Kyler Murray take that next step forward, and can Cliff Kingsbury help him take that next step forward? And the hardest thing for them, and this is why it's a good pick, is that the NFC West. I mean, somebody has to lose that division.
Yeah.
And that's the best division in football, and I don't think it's relatively close. The Seahawks look like they were 12-4 last year. They could be better. The Rams, now Matt Stafford can certainly improve on their 10-6 record. The 49ers were 6-10 last year. I mean, even without Jimmy Garoppolo, they have Trey Lance waiting in the wings, who presumably can carry them to a much, much better record than they put up last year. So, yeah, that leaves, just by default, the Cardinals kind of just sitting there on their laurels. And I do think that if the Cardinals were in the division of my NFC overachiever, they would probably be in the playoffs. And it is none other than my Dallas Cowboys. I think will.
I knew you were going to pick them.
I could not. I kept thinking, because I thought about the Cardinals. There was a bunch of teams I thought of. I thought about the Packers. I thought about the Giants. I mean, there was the Saints. I thought were maybe an easy one, but the Cowboys they're just set up to fail. And I've yet to see anything. We already saw Dak with his potential injury issue with his shoulder now. And we saw what happened last year without Dak. They're awful. Their defense is historically bad last year.
Yeah.
And after watching 3 episodes of Hard Knocks, I can tell you very confidently that I don't think Mike McCarthy is going to be the head coach of this team after this next season. So I just think there's too much hype, and they're just not. Washington is a better team than they are. I think the Giants, when healthy, are a better, more complete team than they are. The Cowboys have a potential to be a high-flying offense, but even then, their offensive line is aging and beaten up and battered, and I don't see them doing. I just don't think they're even going to win their own division.
I mean, we disagree on the division, but I do see a path to them underachieving. Like the defense was ridiculously bad last year. Dak Prescott coming back is not going to change that. The offensive line coming back is not going to change that. Leighton Vander Esch has not proven to be able to stay healthy for a full season. I mean, I know I don't want to call him injury prone, but maybe he's just unlucky, whatever. But the fact of the matter, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. You lose Sean Lee to retirement this year, which he was almost always injured anywhere last year.
I mean, he's just not playing 3 games, that's all.
The drafting of Micah Parsons, based on everything I've seen on tape and I've read about him, it should be an immediate upgrade to that defense. But yeah, it's hard for me to really hardcore argue with you about this because of how bad they were last year. And I don't think that they're worse than the Redskins or the Giants, but
Washington
honestly,
football team.
I'm sorry, Washington football team and the Giants. But honestly, I'm going to just be honest about this. I've been higher on the Cowboys over the last few years than you have been, and you've been right every time. So, that's the bottom line. Like, every time I'm like, oh, the Cowboys, this or that, and you're just like, hold your horses.
Yeah, you and the rest of the world.
They're trash. And I'm like, what are you talking about? This and that, and then you end up being right. So I'm just going to step back and just say, I'm not gonna fight this. Lou thinks they're going to underachieve. Maybe I should put my money in on them underachieving right now.
So who is your underachiever in the AFC?
My underachiever in the AFC, this was more of a gut call than anything else. I picked the Dolphins.
So did I.
Okay. So, yeah, that's funny. It just – and maybe we're on the same thing. There wasn't, one area where I was like, oh, this is why they're going to be bad. They don't have any – there's no aspect of their team on offense or defense, perhaps outside of Xavier Howard, that's elite at all. There's – at least you're going to say the Cowboys, they have Pro Bowl players. They have an elite offensive line. There's just there's just really no one on the Dolphins or no unit on the Dolphins that really scares me. And if I were putting money on whether I think they're going to exceed their 10 wins from last year or fall short, I would bet on them falling short. I'm just not thrilled about what I see on this team. Will Fuller's your number 1 wide receiver. I don't know. I'm not feeling excited about them, and I think they're going to underachieve.
Yeah, I think you're right. Their defense is is good. I think that they lost Kyle Van Noy, who didn't really do much for them last year. They have Jason McCourty there. Byron Jones, former Cowboy, he's a pretty good cornerback. But yeah, Xavier Howard is one of the top, I'd say top 3 cornerbacks in the league last year. Andrew Van Ginkel's another one. He's a linebacker. I remember seeing him. He made some interesting plays last year. So their defense is solid. But yeah, their offense, I mean, I agree. It's the biggest thing to me is Tua. And if you remember last season, Tua Tagovailoa was, pulled in and out in favor of perpetual backup journeyman quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick. And that's not a good sign when your coach puts you in and then takes you back out and then puts you back in again. It's just, it shows a lack of confidence. And I think that's for a reason. And Tua, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, Tua looks like Russell Wilson. He talks like Russell Wilson, but he's not Russell Wilson. He doesn't play like him. He doesn't process things like him. And granted, I understand he was hurt his last season at Alabama, and he was, he was a rookie last year, whatever. But just based on the limited exposure I had to him, I'm not buying into it. And Jacoby Brissett's their backup quarterback, and like you said, I mean, Myles Gaskin, good, B minus running back. Devontae Parker, B wide receiver. Will Fuller, he has an A ceiling and an F floor, depending on if he's there or not. Jalen Waddle is the one question mark that I have because he does have, he played with Tua at Alabama, but he's injury prone too. We saw him; he missed most of his entire senior year with an ankle injury. So if he can be healthy, apparently he's supposed to be unbelievable. I do think Mike Gesicki as their tight end is very, very underrated, but he's not Rob Gronkowski. So this team just feels like they kind of were a little Cinderella-y last year at 10-6, and I think that win total is going to drop somewhat precipitously.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
agree with everything you said.
Interesting. So all right, so I have the Patriots and Panthers as my overachievers, and I have the Dolphins and Cowboys as my underachievers.
And I have the Jets and Vikings as my overachievers, and the Dolphins and Cardinals as my underachievers.
All right, so we'll write those down. We'll check back in and see how we're doing towards the end of the year. We should probably keep maybe we'll have like a freezing cold takes show if we mess up all these, or like a hot takes. We'll see where we are at. Maybe we can do kind of a year in review and see how good and bad we were. But I feel pretty good about this one. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so that's going to do it. This is season 2, episode 18. It's in the books. You can go and listen to all of our shows, iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcast, Anchor by Spotify. Follow us along Facebook, YouTube, Instagram at the Benchwarmers Podcast, at the BW Pod on Twitter, or go to thebenchwarmers.com for all news, notes, and updates involving this show. So that's going to do it. For Jose Ortiz, I am Lou Ruggieri, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.